Hello again, everyone. I'm Trajan Rex, and though I'm still working on my part 2 video for mapped mining, this whole elite dangerous slavery thing has been really big news lately, so I thought we should talk about it. First things first, if you're not aware of what this situation was, I highly recommend going and checking out the pilot's live stream. He did an interview with one of the people who was involved in this. However, as a quick recap, essentially what was happening was a squadron of people were finding newbies in Matet or Dromi in open play who were flying around in their sidewinders and didn't seem to understand much of what was going on. They would then engage these new players in some conversation and explain to them that they were part of a squadron that helped out new players. They would then convince these new characters to come join them at their fleet carrier and give them a ship, usually a keelback, and a set of modules and build setup specifically designed for mining. And then they would take them on their fleet carrier and jump them way out. They would then organize these new players into mining groups, explain to them how to mine, how to operate their ships, how to play Elite Dangerous, all of the time telling them that if they mined all the way up to having $200 million from selling these resources to their fleet carrier, once they reached $200 million, they would be able to advance from essentially the newbie guild into their main squadron, and they would have earned membership into the larger crew. Now, up until this point, this doesn't sound particularly nefarious until you realize that the keelback that they were giving them had a jump range that was too small to even jump to the closest system, meaning these players were now trapped wherever it is that their fleet carrier was. And also that they were paying pennies on the dollar for these resources at their fleet carrier, which would make these players have to mine an extreme amount of resources in order to reach their $200 million number and be advanced into the main squadron. And also that they didn't tell these new players that that was what was going on. Eventually, one of these players that felt stranded reached out to an outside organization in the game for help, and this organization jumped multiple fleet carriers out into the system and rescued a bunch of the quote-unquote slaves. Now, at this point, the story seems pretty cut and dry. A group of experienced players duped a bunch of new players into stranding themselves 1,000 light years outside the bubble with no ability to get back, and then they exploited these poor guys into mining billions of credits for them, and eventually these players were rescued by good Samaritans. That's the narrative that you've been hearing from essentially every single YouTuber and every single person covering this story. And that's a very easy conclusion to come to. It's totally understandable. But I don't think that that really illustrates the entire picture of what's happening here. Partly because it sounds like a fair number of these quote-unquote slaves were actually having a relatively good time out in their mining groups. Of course, it's unacceptable that if you take someone out and strand them deep in dark space and they beg you to go home and you tell them no. I don't know if that happened or not. If it did, that's crappy, for sure. The next question becomes, were these people slaves? And I think we have to be really careful about using the word slavery to describe something like this. Sure, it's possible that these people were doing this against their will. They were definitely trapped, and they definitely had no recourse to get away from the situation that they were in without trying to solicit the help of the people who had knowingly trapped them there. And that's an awful situation. But is that slavery? What's bad about slavery? Let's ask ourselves that first. Is it the fact that you're being forced to do work you don't particularly want to do and don't have any way to not be doing it? I don't know that qualifies as slavery. It actually bears a striking resemblance to the reason that I get up and go to work every day. The only reason that I do it is because if I didn't, I would starve to death. So creating a situation that coerces people into doing work for you, despite the fact that they don't want to, isn't slavery. That's regular society. That's how all of capitalism works. In fact, this question and debate is pretty central to political disagreements the worldwide. I don't necessarily have an answer there, but the argument that keeping somebody in a situation that is disadvantageous to them and giving them a path out of it that also benefits you, the person giving them said path, is a pretty accurate description of Western society and really almost all of human society throughout history. I don't think that aspect of the situation necessarily qualifies it as slavery. So if working and not particularly wanting to is not going to be our definition of slavery, without getting too graphic and too edgy, let's talk about what would be the definition of slavery. Now, obviously, this is a very fraught question and something that a lot of people are going to be deeply invested in the idea that you just don't even discuss, and certainly not in the context of a video game. But if we're going to call this slavery and treat it as though somebody was being evil, I think we actually need to have a perspective on what the evil is in slavery. And it can't possibly be the work, because work is something that all kinds of people do for all kinds of reasons, and often it is because they don't want to. But slavery is a real thing that has affected real human beings for tens of thousands of years. And it's been horrible, detestable, disgusting, and evil every single time it has ever been implemented by anyone. So if these people were slavers, they were evil. They were terrible human beings. And I think we have to be really, really careful where we apply a word that has a real meaning and that describes arguably the most awful thing human beings have ever done to each other in all of human history. A slave is your possession. A slave is someone that you can tell to do work. A slave is somebody that you can tell to do anything. A slave is somebody that you can tie up and you can beat. A slave is somebody that you can take away from their family, that you can sell to someone else, and that then they can do absolutely whatever they want to this human being. A slave is a possession. A slave is an item wrapped in human flesh. And that is what makes it the most nefarious, most disgusting thing human beings have ever done. It reduces a human being to an object, to nothing, to something you can throw away or destroy at will. And I know this description is heavy and way more than what we want to talk about here in a video game. But if we're going to use the word slave, we need to be accurate. It's indefensible to call somebody a slave or to call someone a slaver without proper historical context, without understanding what it is you're actually accusing someone of being, of allowing themselves to be, in this case, in a video game, or accusing somebody of doing to another human being. Slavery is not a joke. It's not something that you accuse somebody of doing because they did something that you didn't like. Slavery is real, even today in our world. And you do humanity and you do yourself and you do reality a disservice by misappropriating the term. So what did these guys do? If it wasn't slavery, and I'm gonna try to stop using that word. I think we've done that question, and the entire subject of actual slavery should make you deeply uncomfortable. So we're not gonna call that anymore. And we're gonna talk about what was really done here. These people gave a high-priced ship to brand new players and explained to them how to play the game, only insofar as they could do the things that these people wanted them to do. But they gave them a community, they gave them stuff, and they gave them a place in which to mine and to learn and to gain an understanding of how to play Elite Dangerous. And there was a set dollar amount that would give them their freedom from the entire situation and graduate them into a full-fledged member of the group. This is indentured servitude at base. That's exactly what it is. It's the pure definition of indentured servitude. Now, indentured servitude sucks. It does. But we have indentured servants all across the world today in entirely civilized societies. As an ex-military person myself, there's a certain amount of indentured servitude to that occupation. They give you training, they give you a place in the world, and if you quit, there are penalties associated with it, one of which can actually be, in certain circumstances, being required to pay back some of the money invested in you. And the barriers to exiting are there specifically because of the money invested in training you. So there's an argument to say that even our military men and women are indentured servants for the time that they're in the military. And I assure you from experience, this is not a fact lost on our actual military members. So, indentured servitude is real. It also sucks. And it's almost certainly the way to characterize what was happening to these brand new players. The next question then that we have to ask ourselves is indentured servitude something that's acceptable within the Elite Dangerous universe? Well, the Empire in Elite Dangerous utilizes indentured servants across the entire Empire. In fact, they're even called slaves in-game. You can trade Imperial slaves. I have had cargo holds full of Imperial slaves. It's obviously, in my opinion, a gross mischaracterization on FDev's part to call these people slaves, but nonetheless, the concept of indentured servitude is totally within the acceptable realm of behavior in the Elite Dangerous universe, as it's written into the story that my cutter and my clipper and my courier were hand built by indentured servants. So there's no argument to make that indentured servitude is way outside the bounds of acceptable behavior inside of Elite Dangerous. Clearly, nobody has found a way to convince human beings to indenture themselves to them before now, but the concept isn't anathema to the entire Elite Dangerous world. The bigger question is, how is it possible that a group of people were able to convince a bunch of brand new players to indenture themselves to them for an extraordinarily long period of time and mine continuously and provide their overlords with a substantial amount of money and either be okay with it, and if they're okay with it, then there's no issue here, but more importantly, not have any idea whatsoever that that's what's happening. How does that happen? The sad answer to that question is that we all know why that was able to happen. Every single one of us has started this game. Every single one of us has been a brand new player in Elite Dangerous and looked around and said, man, I have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on. There's no series of newbie quests. You drop out in Matet with absolutely no understanding of the game. There are absolutely no in-game tools for you to use to actually understand the value of what it is that you're doing. There's no way to get a guide into how to mine from in-game. There's no way to understand the economy in-game. There's no way to understand the benefits of combat versus trading versus passenger missions versus mining. And a great many players wind up wasting enormous amounts of time doing missions that pay almost nothing, just wandering with absolutely no idea what's going on. And that's the reason, we all know it, that this game has so much trouble maintaining brand new players. You start this game, and unless you have a guide, unless you go to YouTube and find my guides or any number of other YouTubers' guides, there's no way to start this game and feel like you have any idea what's going on. These people grabbed these brand new players and said, hey, we'll show you how to play this game. We will give you a bunch of people to hang out with. We will give you something to do. And if you have any questions, you can ask us. We're going to put you on this big, cool fleet carrier, and we're going to give you this cool new ship, and we're going to jump you way out into space so that you can explore and you can see what's going on out here. And then we're going to teach you how to make money in this game. And then once you've shown that you know how to make money and you've grown to be an expert in this particular area, you will have earned membership into our squadron. And we have players all over the galaxy that do all kinds of cool things. And this is how you get entry into our cool kid club. And it worked. It worked. These guys had 20, 30 people in their little Xbox squadron out mining for them. I didn't even know that there were 30 people who played this game on Xbox. And yet somehow they managed to gather them into a cohesive unit, into a group of people who enjoyed talking to each other, enjoyed playing together. They actually had friends they could talk to. And of course, the entire time, this entire situation was contrived in order to massively financially benefit the people that set this system up. But does that really differ from the iPhone that you're watching this video on, or the job that you go to every day, the company that probably brought literally everything into your home because you ordered it on Amazon? Like, building a community of people and convincing them to do stuff for you that massively benefits you and sort of kind of benefits them and gives them something to do is pretty difficult to characterize as evil. It is exploitative for sure, but it's not like the people in this system were gaining nothing out of it. They were gaining a community. They were gaining a direction. And in a game that doesn't provide you with any semblance of direction at all, it's not a crazy thing to think that that's something that brand new players are searching for. There are, of course, other organizations in Elite Dangerous who make it their mission to help out brand new players and get them involved in the game in a way that's not exploitative at all. But these guys aren't hanging out in the newbie areas looking for lost players wandering around in Sidewinders. Who's doing that? The people with a profit motive for doing it. And again, whether or not you agree with somebody having a profit motive, it's clearly not evil, given that our entire society is based on precisely the same model. So, were these guys bad guys? Maybe. Maybe they were. They were certainly exploiting brand new players, and that sucks. But if we're going to demonize these people, we need to understand why it is what they were doing worked at all. They took brand new players and gave them a sense of camaraderie, of purpose, and a group of people to hang out with. There's a reason why World of Warcraft or EverQuest or any number of online role-playing games have newbie quests, have zones designated for specific levels, and have content specifically designed to be done in groups in those areas that are designated for specific levels. It's so that players who are at the same stage in the game can find each other, can meet each other, can hang out, and can learn together, which creates a sense of community. The fact that these guys, with an incredibly exploitative version of that, were able to corral so many players into their group speaks to the incredible need for something like that in Elite Dangerous. And I think at this point, we can all assume that FDev themselves are never going to provide that. They're never going to provide it at all. And so if FDev's never going to provide that, we need to be more proactive about providing such a thing ourselves, especially if we want Elite Dangerous to grow and flourish. With a new expansion coming out soon, there's going to be a large influx of new players. And if we don't have an infrastructure in place to help guide them into the game, it's just going to hemorrhage them. And it's not going to grow. To that point, in the coming weeks, I'm going to announce a change in the way that my squadron works so that we can help foster new player relationships. And it's entirely possible that there's going to be a profit motive associated with it so that there's a drive to do it. And it certainly would never be as exploitative as what these guys had designed because it was really crappy. And I'm not here to justify the extremis to which they took advantage of brand new players, but they were filling a need, and I'm going to try to fill it. And hopefully this can convince other people to try to fill it as well, or join me in trying to fill that need. But brand new players, they need some direction, man. They really do. And this entire situation just speaks to how badly that direction is needed. Thank you for listening to my rant if you've managed to make it this far. I'm Trajan Rex, and I'm going to continue working on my part 2 video for mapped mining in the interim. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you.